Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR, and I'm George Binns. And as you'll notice, this is still election season, and we have this evening as a guest Rachael Abell, who is running for school committee at large, well, semi-at-large, I guess that's wards 1, 2, and 3.
Yes, District A.
District A. And you're currently Ward 1 school committee. So what's the big deal about moving up to 1, 2, and 3? What's going to be different about it?
Sure. So this will be my 6th term if the voters will have me again. And as part of the charter review, my opinions, as well as former Chair Chris Silverstein's opinions, were brought to the table about the need for the school committee to represent a diverse group of parents and constituents in the city. And at that time, we felt that having more voices and more members of the school committee would allow us to do more of the work that's important to us in our community. That's looking at our policies, investigating ways to make our budget work better for our students, as well as just some of the other practical things that the school committee does in terms of hiring and evaluating superintendents. And so the proposal was made to the review charter committee to have a look at the composition of the school committee as it compares to other city boards and commissions, and to think about a way in which we could bring more representation. I wasn't part of the actual decision making, just part of the interview process to ask what would help make the school committee work a little bit better for those people that it represents. And so from that work, the decision was to make semi-at-large positions where an additional member from either wards 1, 2, or 3, or 4, 5, or 6 could have a seat at the table and be part of the standing committees and the work that the school committee does.
Oh, good. You mentioned that one of the things you do is work with the superintendent. So we've got a new superintendent coming on board, and is he here yet, or?
He is here. In fact, he lent some of his talent and expertise before his official start date of July 1st so that he could hit the ground running and have the opportunity to tie off loose ends with Dr. Sue Churchak, who had retired on the 30th of June.
Yeah.
So he's been in and around. As part of the new superintendent process, he's actually required to take training with the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. So he has a mentor, and there is a conference coming up that he will be participating in. Additionally, we have a new assistant superintendent, Erin Brown, and she will also be participating in a lot of that training and professional development.
What's going to be different with the new superintendent and assistant? Anything?
I think a fresh set of eyes and a fresh perspective is always a good idea, especially when a community has challenges. As some people have already heard with the passing of this budget for this fiscal FY26, we are on a course to have some difficult conversations towards the end of this year, leading into next fiscal year, FY27. For all intents and purposes, we are creating a structural deficit where our expenses are outpacing our revenues, and we are going to need to look very creatively to figure out a way either to make the pie bigger or to find efficiencies. And I think that will be the challenge for the next school committee and the next city council.
Yeah, I've had a couple of discussions with candidates for a city council, and they keep mentioning that Prop 2.5 limits the total revenue that we can incrementally increase year after year. And we're getting to the point where it looks like we need more money than Prop 2.5 will generate. And there's been some word going around about an override. And the question I would have is, okay, so we get an override, what are you going to do with the money? Where can you put it?
I think there's a long list of ideas of where we would put the money. But first, we would need the community support to do one of those adjustments in our community's tax base. A Proposition 2.5 override is led by the community. It's going to need the voters of this community to agree that we have priorities that are being unmet. And so from a school perspective, I think we all agree we want to be the district for all of our students, and we want to have a broad and rich offering so that all learners, no matter what their interests or their aptitude, they have the ability to access knowledge through our district and set themselves up for success in their adult life. And so, there are many programs that I'd love us to protect and preserve. I think other communities surrounding us are showing us already that if you have a structural deficit and you're not able to fund the way that you're doing school right now, you're going to have to make really hard choices, whether that's cutting back on the number of languages that we can offer, cutting back on extracurricular activities, all those things that actually make students want to be in school and to enjoy and engage and be part of our school community are really put at risk. And that's why I'm hopeful that we'll have some really creative solutions and conversations in the coming months. I'm very grateful that Councilor Flowers and Councilor Feldman made that public statement in the City Council budget hearing that they are going to help lead the community with a Proposition 2.5 override, because certainly with funding cuts that we're seeing at the national level, uncertainty at our Commonwealth level, Beverly residents are going to have to make their voices heard, that we prioritize school education and our students, as well as all of the other critical city services that are being provided.
Well, I think one of the things that would sell me on an override is very definitive answers of what are you going to do with the money? Because I think too many times an override is, we got this big problem and we need big money to solve it. Well, what is the problem? What are we,
yeah,
where are the problems?
A specific thing that I would say, and that's our biggest expense, is having high quality teachers, staffing our schools with adults that care about our kids and that can bring that education. So staffing would certainly be where we would spend it.
Well, that gets into another issue that some districts, I think two of them that were mentioned nationally are District of Columbia of all, and I think it was Texas, have statewide programs to evaluate teachers. When you start to talk about how we're going to get good quality teachers, the implications are you're evaluating what you've got and you know what you're looking for. So is that something that's on the table of a...
So the Commonwealth always has had evaluation as a part of public education. That is something that we've done in the district. I think that COVID and COVID recovery certainly changed
That screwed up everything.
some of our forward movement on that, but I know that Dr. Cherchak and her leadership team had taken steps to get us all back on track, making sure that we have rigorous curriculum in our classrooms. I have 2 test cases of my own. They're going to be a junior and a senior this year, and I would say that the rigor is returning to the classroom, that teachers are great resources for our students, and we need to have enough of them who are there every day to help our students get that love of learning, that lifelong learning.
Well, one of the comments that came out as part of the negotiations for the new BTA contract was that we're running into a situation where some of these senior teachers get to within 5 years of retirement and they move to a more lucrative position in some other district so they can enhance their retirement. And I'm wondering, is this going to be a problem with the new contract, or do we have enough incentive to keep the teachers here?
I think what we do in Beverly is special, and I think a lot of our educators recognize that and value their tenure with us in the district. I can't speak, generally about what other teachers in other districts might be doing differently, but I think for us here in Beverly, we need to sort of move forward from where we were last summer and fall, and really re-engage in what we're trying to make special here in Beverly. And I think that in addition to compensation and benefits, is a reason why teachers would want to start and end their career here in Beverly.
So we're in a situation, I guess, where money's going to get tight. We got a new superintendent, so there's going to be changes made. One of the things we were talking about before we started was there's some vacancies that aren't going to be filled. For instance, your position as Ward 1 school committee, nobody's running for it.
Yeah, as
This
of
is
this
kind of a
morning.
scary situation in that similarly with the city council, there are very few challenges going on. So
It's not an easy time to be in an elected position. I think that personally, I feel, outside challenges to my my personality or my qualifications, and I have to say, being elected is not for everyone. But really, it's about being part of the solution, and I think we need creative problem solvers who are willing to do the work and can kind of brush off any of the criticisms that come with the position. Specifically, Ward 1, as of this morning, does not have anyone who's pulled papers for the school committee seat. I've been trying really hard to do outreach through PTOs, through community civic associations, and it was actually quite interesting. Jeremy Coolidge, one of our students who's on the youth leadership committee, came up and said, well, what happens if no one runs? And, that is a good question. Practically speaking, there could be a write-in campaign. We had that in Ward 4 in the last election. There was a write-in campaign. Or a previous election. And then if there aren't any write-in candidates who are eligible, qualified, and willing to serve, then we would be looking at a vacancy where the school committee and the city council would jointly, by a majority vote, approve a nomination of a member. I think it will be vitally important that we fill all of the seats and we fill them with people who are willing to do the work, have the availability to do the work, and are ready to really face some of the hard choices and questions that our community is going to face in the next fiscal
we
year.
went through this with the city council when the Ward 6 councilor moved out of his district. And according to the charter, city council's got to find a replacement. They've since fixed that problem, but they went through the same kind of a procedure where they would interview candidates and they picked one.
Yeah, they fixed that for school committee as well, in case any one of us should decide to leave our current address and move into a different.
As long as you stay in
As long
town.
as you stay in the city,
Yeah.
you can finish serving out your term, because you're right, it's going to be a little bit challenging if we can't have a full slate at the table to help the new superintendent make informed decisions about what are the priorities in our community. He obviously comes with a lot of expertise about education and leadership, but he doesn't know Beverly quite as well, even though he says during his interview he was trying to buy a house here in Beverly. He's over the
Lots of
border, over the border in Ipswich, so not too far away. I think it will be important for him to have a variety of voices at the table. I'm encouraged that there's some new names that are appearing. For Ward 2, for instance, I saw someone that has students in the district is interested in that school committee seat, so that is welcome news. And, I almost want to look directly at the camera and make a plea to my constituents in the Ryle side and Shingleville neighborhoods. You can do this. There are definitely organizations such as the Massachusetts Association of School Committees that will help you understand the legal aspects of the role of school committee and then the practical aspects of the three pillars. We hire and fire superintendents, we set policy, and we set budget priorities.
Yeah.
That's essentially the school committee job. On top of that, we have the pleasure of looking at our curriculum, approving curriculum change choices, getting to see our students in action, whether they're coming to perform at one of our school committee meetings or we're invited to go to one of the events that are happening in our school. There's a lot of benefits to being on the school committee that I've really enjoyed in the last 5 terms, so the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important that we find those people that would like to learn more, would like to be in those seats, because there are a few of us that have been on the school committee for multiple terms that are pretty much getting out of the school-age children and looking forward. So we're going to have more seats that come available, I believe, in
Yeah.
the near future.
Well, do you expect the turnover for exactly the reasons you're mentioning? You get involved in the schools because you got kids in the school.
Yeah.
And once they're out of the school, your priorities shift. Now you got kids in college or starting a new life someplace, so your
Yeah.
priorities get to be drastically
I always
different.
think of the circle game, that song that we used to sing in my own elementary school. And, you know, there are many reasons why I decided to run for school committee when my children were in 1st and 2nd grade. I felt at that time there was a need for someone to advocate for the new middle school. I felt that we needed to have strong leadership of people who actually sent their children to public school, and for people who just really enjoyed school their whole lives. I think that's one of the things that encouraged me to run. I had actually just finished my master's degree over at Endicott, and one of the last capstone classes was, how are you going to be of service to your community? Like, what's next? Now that you've accomplished this additional degree, what's next? And I thought back to my own family. My mom was on the school board when I was in school. And she continued in a role of treasurer for our school district. I went to school in New Hampshire where we had school supervisory units, or SAUs.
Oh, yeah, they're different towns.
Yeah, because I came from a little town. But my father served on the planning board and the conservation commission. My grandfather was a state legislature, speaker of the House. My grandmother did something called senior citizens luncheons, which is like a Meals on Wheels, but you actually gather everyone in a place, so they had the social aspects. So I grew up with a lot of that, and I felt when my kids were in 1st and 2nd grade, I needed to start being of service and show them sort of, it takes a community of people who care to get the work done to keep a community special.
Yeah.
So.
Where'd you get your degree in?
So I did Masters of Business Administration at Endicott. My undergraduate was at the University of New Hampshire in my home state, and that was in English journalism, believe it or not.
Okay.
And so I still use that degree quite a bit in my professional career as well.
Yeah, I have this book about English teachers. They always tell you got to be more creative. And they never gave me credit for my creative spelling, but that's another story. But you get into this issue of, okay, we got to get more people involved. And this is the kind of thing that I think people have to see what goes on in the school committee meeting. And fortunately, BevCam, throw a plug in for them, they record these meetings, and so you get some idea of what you're signing up for and what you're involved in. But again, getting back to this new superintendent, didn't hear much about why you picked him. What is he going to bring to the table that made everybody think this is the one?
One of the things I heard quite clearly is that Peter Cushing, Dr. Cushing, brings passion for education and passion for our community. He understands the importance of being a part of the fabric of the community, not just an employee. So I have really good feelings that he is the right candidate to help us with some of the healing that needs to go on, with better communication so people understand some of the issues and the complexity. I think that we struggled in the last few months to sort of unpack the complexity that exists in the decisions that the school committee makes. I know that there are certain people in the community that believe that the mayor drives the decision-making process about what the schools can be afforded in terms of a budget. But really, there's a lot more work that goes in on our budget priorities behind the scenes, understanding the true cost of our contractual obligations as well as our special education obligations to our students. understanding where we have pockets of risk in our budget, where if federal Title I or Title III funding doesn't come in as we had planned, we need to, shift priorities to make sure that we are still serving those students in the best way that we can. So, long story short is, there is complexity in school committee, but at the same time, as you said, BevCam kind of makes it simple for people to follow along. Sometimes I encourage people to watch the playback of the meeting, maybe on a 1.5 speed, so they can get through the meeting a little bit faster. But there's a lot of information being communicated out to the community in those sessions. And additionally, we as school committee members receive packets of information that have even more detail. So people should always feel, welcome to contact us to ask more about the issues. Sometimes we can't necessarily state our opinions before we take a formal vote on different options or policies, but we can definitely explain the information that we have in front of us.
Yeah, I think that's the other part of the problem is the kid goes off to school, they get on the bus, and they come back at 3:30, 4 o'clock, whenever, and what happened today? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nothing, yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents are sort of left in the dark as to is my kid getting an education or not? And what kind of an education?
Yeah, and I think that's one of Dr. Cushing's priorities that he articulated to us, is that he wants to increase the amount of communications that are going home to caregivers to make sure that the families as well as the students feel connected to our district and to our community. I can remember when my kids were little, I call them the littles. When kids are littles, the teachers do a lot of outbound communications, whereas as they start to get older through the middle school years, the dynamic shifts where the teachers are developing relationships with our students to make them responsible and accountable. And so some of the information gets a little bit lost, but perhaps, some of our students need the extra support of having parents know the same thing that they do. And then again, in high school, the dynamic changes even further, where parents are less informed about the day-to-day, but our principals, especially the one here at the high school, does a great job with a weekly wrap-up email that's filled with information and links. I think it's incumbent on caregivers to take the time to check out those packets of information that are sent out, especially at the middle and high school, to sort of ask those probing questions of your students, to maybe get more of, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's one of the concerns. And, used to go to the breakfast with seniors that held at the senior center in the school. And one of the ones that concerned me is met two young ladies there, different time periods, who wanted to be veterinarians. So I asked them, well, why didn't you go to Essex Tech? And one young lady said, well, I didn't want to leave my friends. Okay, you get a little nervous about getting into a new environment. I can understand that. And the other one said, I didn't realize I could go to college from Essex Tech. So I think this is part of the issue of do the kids really talk about what's going on and why it's going on? And that's the point at which the parents get involved and say, how come, why not, and all that sort of stuff.
I'd like to believe your experience predates our career and college readiness programs. I think that a lot more direct communication starts even in the 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade now within our district, to make sure students understand the options of Essex Tech and our After Dark programs that we have at the Tech and in Salem right now. Because students should take this time to explore different options. I think, for someone who wants to be a vet, either choice of school is great. The Vet Tech program over at Essex Tech is definitely aligned to get people prepared and help them explore if that's really what they would like to do. Our honors and advanced placement classes here are also a great pathway to college, because veterinary school takes quite a bit of time and understanding of math and sciences. So either path is good, but I think making sure that students understand their college and career options early so they can make informed decisions about the classes they select. High school is the first time for many of these students that they actually have voice and choice and the ability to sort of set their path. And I think that's one of the things that I'm hoping that we'll be able to preserve as a community is the breadth of our offering so that all students feel that there's something in the high school for them.
Well, we come to the time where, since you're a candidate for the office, it's your turn to make your pitch.
Oh, well, I am humbly asking that residents of Ward 1, 2, and 3 re-elect me for a 6th term to the school committee in this new District A position. I feel like I have a desire to help our new superintendent, help our new school committee members, continue down the path of providing all of our students with the best quality education that we can, and to make them lifelong learners. So if you see me out and about, I am still collecting some signatures to get my name on the ballot. I'm also eagerly looking for a Ward 1 constituent who would like to serve in the empty seat on the school committee. And I promise there are lots of resources and people eager to help you figure out what it is that you want to accomplish on the school committee and the way to get that done. Thank you, George.
Oh, thank you for joining us this evening, and as the campaign goes on, if you want to come back and do it again,
Okay.
we can do it and get into some of the more issues that you mentioned that we have a disagreement on. I'd like to explore some of them.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for staying with us this evening. And as I mentioned, my email address is at the front end and at the tail end and in the credits. You got a comment, send me a note. And if you got a longer comment, there's room for you here at the table. And thanks again for joining us, and see you next time.